The look on Uncle Richard's face was worth every sleepless night, every mocking comment, every moment of doubt I'd endured over the past 5 years. But let me start from the beginning. My name is James Sullivan, and I never took the traditional path. While my cousins went to prestigious universities, I worked full-time at our family's pharmaceutical manufacturing company, Sullivan Pharmaceuticals, taking online classes at night. Not because I couldn't get into a real college, I had been accepted to several, but because I saw something they didn't. The future of pharmaceutical manufacturing wasn't in the old methods my uncle clung to. It was in automation, in artificial intelligence, in systems that could adapt and learn. But to build that future, I needed to understand both the science and the practical reality of our industry. Another late night with your digital diploma mill. Uncle Richard would smirk whenever he caught me studying in my small office at the plant. He'd inherited control of the company when my father, his younger brother, died unexpectedly 6 years ago. My 10% ownership stake, left to me by Dad, was treated as a mere courtesy. "The future is changing, Uncle Richard," I'd reply, not looking up from my advanced robotics textbook. "We need to change with it." He'd laugh, that condescending chuckle that echoed through the boardroom whenever I tried to suggest improvements. The pharmaceutical industry is about tradition, James, about proven methods. League the sci-fi dreams to Silicon Valley. But while he was dismissing my ideas, I was watching our competitors. Watching them struggle with the same problems we faced: contamination issues, production delays, quality control failures. Problems I knew could be solved with the right technology. My online degree wasn't just in engineering, it was a specialized program in pharmaceutical manufacturing automation. While my cousins were partying at their Ivy League schools, I was spending every free moment in our manufacturing plant, learning every process, every failure point, every opportunity for improvement. And I was building something that would change everything. "You're wasting your time," my cousin Michael, Uncle Richard's oldest son, told me one day. He just graduated from Harvard Business School and had been fast-tracked to VP of Operations. "Dad's never going to let some kid with an internet degree make major changes to his company." His company. That's how they all thought of it. They'd forgotten that my father had been the one to modernize Sullivan Pharmaceuticals in the first place, taking it from a small local operation to a regional powerhouse. They'd forgotten that his stake, my stake now, had been earned through innovation, not inheritance. But I hadn't forgotten, and I hadn't been wasting my time. For 3 years, I worked on my project in secret. During day shifts, I was just another mid-level employee, running quality control tests and maintaining equipment. But at night, in a small lab I'd set up in my apartment, I was building the future. I called it the Adaptive Manufacturing Intelligence System, ANIS, for short. It was more than just an automation system. It was an AI-driven platform that could monitor, adjust, and optimize pharmaceutical manufacturing processes in real time. It could predict equipment failures before they happened, adjust formulations for maximum efficiency, and ensure quality control standards that far exceeded FDA requirements. The patent application was filed under my name personally, not the company's. Uncle Richard's dismissal of my hobby meant he never asked me to sign an intellectual property agreement for my after-hours work. His arrogance would prove to be his biggest mistake. I finished my degree the same week I received notice that my patent had been approved. The timing couldn't have been better. Sullivan Pharmaceuticals was in trouble. Our largest competitor had just launched a new automated manufacturing system that cut their production costs by 30%. Our stock was falling. Shareholders were getting nervous. Uncle Richard called an emergency shareholders meeting. I sat quietly in the back, watching him try to calm the nervous investors with promises of cost-cutting measures and efficiency improvements. "We're implementing new standard operating procedures," he assured them, shooting a warning glance at Michael, who was squirming in his seat. What the shareholders didn't know was that 3 batches had failed quality control that week alone. At this rate, we'd lose our FDA certification within months. "Perhaps," I spoke up, my voice carrying across the suddenly silent room, "we should discuss alternative solutions." Uncle Richard's face darkened. "This isn't the time for your theories, James. The adults are talking." I stood, straightening my tie, the same tie Dad had worn to his first board meeting. "Actually, Uncle Richard, this is exactly the time. Especially given the failed batches you're trying to hide from the shareholders." The room erupted in concerned murmurs. Michael half rose from his seat, but Uncle Richard waved him down. "Your online degree is worthless," he announced, trying to regain control of the room. "Step aside and let real businessmen handle this." I smiled, feeling the weight of the documents in my briefcase. Dad had always told me timing was everything in business. He was right. "Without this," I said calmly, pulling out my patent documents, "your company is worth nothing." The room went silent. "What are you talking about?" Uncle Richard demanded, but I could see the fear creeping into his eyes. I opened my laptop, connecting it to the presentation screen. "Let me show you the future of pharmaceutical manufacturing. The future I've spent the last 3 years building while you were busy mocking my education." As ANIS came to life on the screen, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the darkened window. I saw Dad there, in my stance, in my determination. He'd always believed in me, always supported my unconventional path. Now it was time to show everyone why. The shareholders leaned forward as I began my presentation, their eyes widening as they realized what I'd created. Uncle Richard sank into his chair, his face pale, as the full implications of my patent became clear. Sometimes the best revenge isn't in proving others wrong, it's in proving yourself right. And I was just getting started. The presentation screen glowed behind me as I demonstrated ANIS in action. I'd installed a test version in a sealed section of our manufacturing plant, another detail Uncle Richard had been too arrogant to notice. "Over the past 3 months," I explained, pulling up the comparison data, "this system has run parallel to our current production line. The results speak for themselves." The numbers flashed across the screen. 45% reduction in production costs, 98% decrease in quality control failures, real-time adaptation to manufacturing variables that had plagued the industry for decades. "Impossible," Michael blurted out. "Those numbers can't be real." I smiled, clicking to the next slide. "The FDA certification team visited last week. Would you like to see their preliminary report?" Uncle Richard's face had turned an interesting shade of purple. "You had no authority to install experimental systems in our facility. This is a violation of—" "Actually," I interrupted, "I had full authority. Check my employee contract. As quality control supervisor, I'm empowered to test new quality assurance methods. Everything was done by the book." I turned to the shareholders. "What you're seeing isn't just an improvement. It's a revolution in pharmaceutical manufacturing. And the patent?" I held up the documents. "It's already being called the most significant innovation in the industry in 20 years. The room erupted in excited chatter. I could see dollar signs in the investors' eyes as they grasped the implications. Our competitors would pay billions for this technology. one shareholder called out. They already have, I replied calmly. I received offers from 3 major pharmaceutical companies this morning. They're quite interested in the fact that Sullivan Pharmaceuticals doesn't own the patent rights. Uncle Richard stood up so quickly his chair toppled backward. This is outrageous. You developed this while working for us. The company owns nothing. I cut in. I developed this on my own time, with my own resources. The patent is registered to me personally. Your repeated insistence that my work was worthless and unofficial meant you never had me sign an IP agreement. A fact my lawyers thoroughly documented. I clicked to the final slide. A sales projection showing Sullivan Pharmaceuticals' future with and without aita. The contrast was stark. Without this system, we'll lose FDA certification within 6 months. Our competitors' automated systems have made our current methods obsolete. With aita, I gestured to the upward climbing graph. We become the industry leader in pharmaceutical manufacturing technology. The boardroom doors opened, and 3 people walked in. Uncle Richard's face went from purple to ash white as he recognized them. Allow me to introduce David Chin from Merck, Sarah Williams from Pfizer, and Thomas Rodriguez from Johnson & Johnson, I said pleasantly. They've each expressed strong interest in acquiring my patent. I invited them to today's meeting to observe the technology in action. Michael jumped up. This is a closed shareholders meeting. You can't. Actually, I held up a document. As a shareholder, I can invite relevant parties to observe non-confidential technological demonstrations. It's in the company bylaws, the ones Dad wrote. The 3 pharmaceutical representatives took seats at the back of the room, their interested gazes fixed on the presentation screen. So, I continued, we have a choice to make. Sullivan Pharmaceuticals can license my technology, maintaining family ownership, but paying standard market rates for the patent rights. Or, I glanced at the industry representatives, I can accept one of the several very generous offers I've received. Uncle Richard slammed his fist on the table. This is blackmail. No, I corrected him. This is business. The kind of business you claimed I couldn't understand with my worthless online degree. I pulled out another document, this one considerably thicker. This is my offer to Sullivan Pharmaceuticals. Exclusive license rights to aita with certain conditions. What conditions? A shareholder asked eagerly. First, a restructuring of the board. My father's vision for this company was about innovation, not stagnation. We need leadership that understands that. Uncle Richard's face contorted. You want my position? No, I said quietly. I want the position I earned. Chief Technology Officer, with a seat on the board. The patent rights come with my appointment. The room was silent as the implications sank in. Without my technology, Sullivan Pharmaceuticals would fail within months. With it, we'd dominate the market. And if we refuse? Michael asked, his Harvard confidence cracking. I gestured to the industry representatives. Then I walk across the street to one of our competitors. My patent, my choice. One of the shareholders, an elderly man who'd known my father, spoke up. Richard, we need to vote on this now. Uncle Richard looked around the room, seeing his support crumbling. 20 years of ruling the company through fear and tradition, undone in a single morning. This isn't over, he hissed. Actually, I replied, it is, because there's one more thing you should know. I nodded to my lawyer, who had been waiting quietly by the door. She distributed copies of one final document to the board members. What's this? Uncle Richard demanded, scanning the pages. The results of the internal audit I commissioned 3 months ago. It seems there have been some irregularities in the company's recent FDA compliance reports. Irregularities that coincide with Michael's appointment as VP of Operations. Michael went pale. Uncle Richard started to speak, but I held up my hand. The full report has already been submitted to the relevant authorities. So you have a choice, Uncle Richard. Accept my offer, or explain to the FDA why our compliance reports don't match our actual production records. The room exploded into chaos. Board members huddled in corners. Whispered conversations filled the air. And through it all, I stood calmly at the podium, watching my uncle's empire crumble. Dad had taught me that success in business wasn't about prestigious degrees or family connections. It was about vision, integrity, and the courage to stand up for what you built. As the board called for an immediate vote on my proposal, I caught my reflection again in the window. This time, I didn't just see Dad's determination in my stance. I saw his smile. 6 months can change everything. I stood in my new office, my father's old office, looking out over the manufacturing floor. Below, AMIS hummed quietly, its adaptive systems orchestrating a perfect dance of automation and precision. Our production efficiency had increased by 250% since full implementation, and our stock price had tripled. The door opened, and Maria Rodriguez, our new VP of Operations, entered with the latest performance reports. The FDA inspectors just left, she announced, grinning. They're calling us the new gold standard in pharmaceutical manufacturing. They want to use our facility as a model for updated industry regulations. I nodded, remembering Uncle Richard's dire predictions about how my experimental system would destroy the company's reputation. He'd been wrong about that, just as he'd been wrong about so many things. The aftermath of that shareholders' meeting had been swift and decisive. The board had voted unanimously to accept my proposal, though not just because of the patent. The FDA compliance irregularities had been worse than even I'd suspected. Michael had been cooking the books for months, hiding quality control failures to protect his position. When the full investigation concluded, he'd faced criminal charges. Uncle Richard had been forced to resign to avoid being implicated in the cover-up. Have you seen today's Wall Street Journal? Maria asked, handing me the paper. The headline read, Sullivan Pharmaceuticals leads industry revolution. Stock soars on innovative AI manufacturing system. Below was a smaller headline. Former CEO Richard Sullivan faces SEC investigation in separate venture. I set the paper aside. Uncle Richard's downfall wasn't my concern anymore. I had bigger things to focus on. Like the research center I'd established in my father's name, offering scholarships to online students developing innovative pharmaceutical technologies, or the mentorship program helping employees earn degrees while working, just as I had. My phone buzzed, a message from Dr. Sarah Chen at MIT. Her team wanted to collaborate on expanding AIS's capabilities into biotechnology manufacturing. 5 years ago, someone with my worthless online degree wouldn't have gotten a response from MIT. Now they were calling me. A knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. To my surprise, it was Aunt Helen, Uncle Richard's wife. James, she said softly, do you have a moment? I gestured to the chair across from my desk. She sat, looking uncomfortable in the office where her husband had once reigned. I wanted to thank you, she began, for what you did for Tommy. Tommy was my youngest cousin, Uncle Richard's second son. Unlike Michael, he'd never fit the mold of the privileged executive. He'd been quietly taking online engineering courses, hiding his studies from his father just as I had. After the shakeup, I'd found his application in the HR system, rejected on Uncle Richard's orders. Now he was thriving in our technical division, his worthless online degree proving just as valuable as mine had. Tommy earned his position, I replied, just like everyone else here. Aunt Helen nodded, tears in her eyes. Richard was wrong about so many things. About you, about education, about how to run this company. She paused. Your father would be proud. Would he? I looked around the office, at the changes I'd made. The old mahogany furniture had been replaced with modern workstations. The walls of family photos now shared space with technical diagrams and real-time manufacturing displays. But his most important lessons remained: integrity, innovation, and the courage to forge your own path. My computer chimed. An alert from AMEIS. The system had automatically detected and corrected a minor variation in one of our production lines, maintaining perfect quality without human intervention. Another small miracle that my internet degree had helped create. How's Uncle Richard doing? I asked, though I already knew. The industry newsletters kept track of his attempts to start over, each one failing as investors remembered the FDA scandal. He's adjusting, Aunt Helen said carefully. The SEC investigation has been difficult, but maybe it's what he needed. He's finally realizing that the world has changed. Indeed it had. Sullivan Pharmaceuticals had transformed from a traditional manufacturing company into a technology leader. Our market cap had grown from $50 million to over $2 billion in 6 months. Competitors who had once dismissed us were now licensing our technology. And it had all started with an online degree and a dream that wouldn't die. My assistant buzzed in. The quarterly board meeting was about to start. Aunt Helen stood to leave. James, she said at the door, I heard about the scholarship program you started. The one for online students. I nodded. Richard saw it too. He didn't say anything, but I think he finally understands what he failed to see before. After she left, I walked down to the manufacturing floor. The employees no longer stopped working when the boss appeared. They were too engrossed in their tasks, too proud of their contributions to this new era of pharmaceutical manufacturing. Tommy was at his station, fine-tuning one of AMEIS's sensor arrays. His online degree in robotics engineering hung proudly on the wall of his workspace, just like mine did in the office upstairs. How's the calibration going? I asked. He grinned, gesturing to his screen. The AI suggested a modification to the sensor alignment. It's improving accuracy by another 3%. I watched the system work, marveling at how something that had started as sketches on my apartment wall had grown into this. The future of pharmaceutical manufacturing, built by a kid with an online degree who refused to believe his education was worthless. Back in my office, I opened my desk drawer and pulled out the nameplate that had once sat on Uncle Richard's desk. Richard Sullivan, CEO. It read in pompous gold letters. I dropped it in the recycling bin. My new nameplate was simpler, cleaner. James Sullivan, Chief Technology Officer. Below it was a small engraving of the first line of code I'd written for AMEIS, back when it was just a dream. The board meeting would start soon. Another quarter of record profits to report. New innovations to discuss. More boundaries to push. But first, I sent a quick email to the head of our scholarship program. Double the number of online degree scholarships for next year. And add a note to the application. No degree is worthless if you have the vision to use it. Sometimes the sweetest revenge isn't in proving others wrong. It's in proving that success comes not from where you learned, but what you do with that knowledge. And sometimes, a worthless degree becomes priceless when combined with determination, integrity, and the courage to change an industry. Uncle Richard had been right about one thing. Tradition was important in the pharmaceutical industry, but he'd forgotten that every tradition started with someone willing to try something new. As I headed to the board meeting, I passed the company's mission statement, newly updated after my takeover. Sullivan Pharmaceuticals, where innovation meets integrity. Below it, in smaller letters, was my father's favorite quote: "Education is never worthless. Vision is priceless." He'd been right all along.